Welcome to the Story Learning Podcast, regular doses of language learning tips and motivation to help you become fluent in any language. With me, Olly Richards. For language programs, books, free resources, and much more, visit StoryLearning.com.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the I Will Teach You a Language podcast. Very happy to have you here. Thanks for joining me. And today finally sees the beginning of the project that I have been teasing you with for some time, which is my project to learn Italian. And I'm going to be doing it right here in London for the next 2 or 3 months. I'm kind of calling it my summer project because it's going to be a lot of fun. And today, what I'm going to do is play you the audio from the intro video to the project. So I created this cool little video where I sort of walk you through the streets of London and sort of show you where I am and what I'm going to be doing. And I sort of explain the project and all of that. And I put, some work into that video. So rather than just kind of rehash everything here, I thought I would simply just play you the audio from the video, so by way of introducing the project. Now, I know that many of you guys you listen to the podcast religiously, but you don't maybe go to the blog, and you don't go to the YouTube channel and all of that, and that's absolutely fine. So, I'm a bit like that myself, actually. I listen to tons and tons of podcasts, but I don't really read blogs, and I don't watch all that much YouTube. I'm just a huge podcast person, so I completely understand if many of you don't actually visit any of my other channels, in spite of all the, all the work that I put out. People have the mediums that they like, right? So I guess what I'm just becoming a bit more conscious of the fact that I can't assume that you are necessarily receiving my emails or visiting the blog or seeing my videos, and so I am having to kind of think about ways to recycle all of this so that if I'm doing a cool project like this, I make sure that everybody hears about it and gets to follow along. So, with that in mind, I'd like to kick off. All right then, without any further ado, here is the intro video to my summer-long project to learn Italian.
Now, over the last few years, I've done quite a few different language projects. I learned Cantonese while living in Qatar. I learned Thai in 2 weeks in Thailand. And I had a failed Spanish immersion project in Mexico. This summer, it's time for something a bit different. Now, as you can see, we're here in London, in the UK, and it is shaping up to be the best summer of all time. Not only because it's 30 degrees and England are about to win the World Cup, but because I'm staying here all summer and I'm learning Italian. Now, this is no normal language learning project, and here's why. I'm going to be learning Italian from right here in London without traveling anywhere abroad to study. I'm going to be doing it without speaking a word for the first month, and at the very end of the project, I'll be traveling to Italy to be tested to see just how far I've come. Now, gimmicks aside, this project does actually have quite a serious aim. Many people seem to think that you can't learn a foreign language to fluency or to a good level as an adult. But I'm going to show you how you can learn a new language to a very good level in a short space of time and without moving abroad to do it. So let me tell you a little bit more about the project and what on earth is going on. Right, now we are out of the sun and in the shade. Let me give you a little rundown of this Italian project and what it's all about. I've got my notes here. There's quite a lot to remember. I'm going to try to keep this video short. Now, the main reason I want to learn Italian is because I think it's really going to enhance my life here in London. I meet so many Italians on a regular basis. Being able to speak Italian would be a fantastic thing for me in my life. And so that's my main drive. But I'm also conscious that a lot of people recently have been referring to these studies that claim that one cannot learn a foreign language to native level or to high levels of fluency after the age of 10. And of course, this is nonsense. And so I want to set about showing how you can learn a language to a very good level. And it doesn't have to be a native level. I don't claim to get to a native level in Italian. I think that probably is impossible. But I can get to a level that is so good that I can integrate it into my life, meet Italian people, and live my life in Italian if I wish to. That is basically the ultimate aim of this, and that's what I want to demonstrate in these videos. You also don't have to move abroad to study. I'm going to be doing all of this from home. I'm going to be documenting everything I'm doing. You're going to be getting weekly videos, you're going to be getting blog posts, and I'm also going to be keeping quite thorough directories of everything I'm doing. So I'm going to have pages on my blog with links to all the resources I'm using, all the videos in one place, also weekly updates where I'm going to share my study process and all of that. So if you want to follow along with those, then the links are going to be in the description below. You can see all those different pages there and navigate between them as well. So my views on language learning have changed quite a bit in the last few years. It's one of the great things about having this platform. I can kind of learn languages and allow my views and my ideas to change and then just share it with all you guys. One of the big changes recently is that I've really become a convert to input-based methods. So this doesn't mean doing whatever I can to learn to speak as quickly as possible. This means saying, okay, I'm going to just take my time. I'm going to get a lot of input in the language through listening and reading, and then I'm going to wait until I've got that foundation in the language, and then I'm going to start to speak. And because I've got the foundation, so the theory goes, then when I come to speak, not only is it going to be much easier because I can understand the conversations, but I'm also going to have such a good foundation that I'm going to be able to speak more myself. Now, I've been testing this out a lot in my Japanese at kind of higher levels. This is the first time I'm taking this on as myself as a beginner in a new language. But I have been making books and courses in different languages for some time now that uses this method, story-based method, input-based method that focuses on stories. And of course, this has all been extremely popular with all of you guys who bought my short story book, conversations program, my uncovered courses. And so what I want to do really with this series is to actually show myself doing it, walk the walk, as well as talk the talk. So, hopefully this is going to prove an inspiration to you guys. So the basic plan is for the first month, I'm not going to do any speaking whatsoever. Okay? I want to put this input-based method to the test. So I'm going to be using comprehensible input, which is material that's at my level, obviously beginner level, that I can just about understand. And to the extent that I can find that material, I'll be using that to study with, and also sharing that with the resource pages that I mentioned. Part of the problem with studying with an input-based method is actually finding the material. Obviously, with my work, that's what I focus on doing now, is producing this useful, compelling material to use. And so part of what I'm going to be documenting here is how I find that material, and obviously sharing it with you guys when I do. So for the first month, there'll be no speaking. At the 1 month mark, I'm going to record myself speaking, my first ever conversation in Italian, and you will be able to see that here on YouTube. So it'll be interesting to see what I've managed to do by that point. Month 2, I expect to be just a lot of speaking. And then month 3, I expect probably to take quite a few lessons so I can have some professional help to start to notice the gaps in my Italian, the opportunities that I have for improving, and such like. Now, some people have been asking me what level I expect to reach in this project by the end of the 2 to 3 months. And I don't know. I'm not going to set a target, partly because, you can't control the level that you reach. But you can control the actions you take that might lead to you acquiring such a level. So I can't control whether I get to a B1 or a B2 level, but I can make sure that I spend 2 to 3 hours a day learning Italian. Now, part of what I want to do here is make this realistic. And I know that not everybody has, has 8 hours a day to study. But I think that someone who is learning a language seriously can afford to spend 2 hours a day, or at least 1 to 2 hours a day on proper sit-down study. And on top of that, there is all the dead time that we tend to have, driving or in the train. And so, as such, I'm going to be aiming for about 2 to 3 hours a day of input from Italian, because I think, although I could do more if I wanted to, I think that is pretty realistic and a reasonable amount of study to actually be showcasing, such that somebody who's watching this and wants to emulate it can actually do it and doesn't just say, oh, well, that's all right, because Olly's got 8 hours a day to study. So we're going to try and keep this realistic. Obviously, if it was just 30 minutes a day or an hour a day, there's only so much you can do. So I think really for any project you take seriously, you need to aim for about 10 hours a week at least, which equates to 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. So that's what I'm going to be aiming for. I am also quite keen to quantify this as much as possible. All right? 'Cause it's easy to talk. It's much more difficult to prove things. And so one of the things I'm going to be doing is working with Steve Kaufman and Link, Lingq, link.com, to track and quantify some of the stuff that I'm going to be doing here. So although I'm actually a fan of podcasts and books, I'm going to be trying to do all my learning digitally here. And so with all the material that I use, I'm going to be importing it into Link, and I'm going to be using Link to do all my listening and reading. And what that's going to mean is that it's going to give me lots of great statistics as the weeks and months go on. It's going to tell me how many words I've learned, whatever that means, how many words I've been exposed to meaningfully. It's going to tell me how many pages I've read. It's going to tell me how many hours I've listened. And so this is going to be very interesting at different points to be able to kind of look back and say, all right, so I've been doing 2 hours a day, and this is how much ground I've managed to cover in Italian. Because when I get to the end of the project, that's some really, really useful data right there. So you're going to be able to follow what I'm doing on Link. In the resource pages that I mentioned, I'm going to be giving you a link to my profile so that you can actually look and follow along all the different numbers that I mentioned before. So that's going to be in there. What else have I got to say? Yeah, so you can expect weekly videos, weekly blog posts. I'm also, for those of you who are actually learning Italian or would like a little bit more, I've got a mailing list where I'm going to be sending out cool stuff that I find. That might be like cool little resources I just want to share with you, little discovery or tricks that I found, whatever it may be, or maybe some spontaneous videos that I record with some thoughts on what I'm doing. If you would like to get those, then you should go over to the URL that's going to be right at the top of the link in the description box. And that's going to be a place where you can enter your email, sign up to my Italian-only newsletter, and then I will send you cool Italian stuff by email as I find it. So make sure to do that if you either like to follow the project more closely or else you have a real interest in Italian yourself. All right, so a few more things. There are a couple of concerns for me in this project, things that I don't know quite how they're going to play out. And so I thought I'd mention those here in the interests of actually keeping this as authentic as possible. First thing is that, I've been looking forward to doing a language project for me, just for me, for some time now. And so I'm really looking forward to this. It's a great summer project for me. But I am a little bit nervous about the kind of pressure of having to do this publicly. I know how helpful these videos and blog posts and things are, but it does kind of give me a sort of level of, I don't know if I'd say stress, but certainly pressure, which I would rather not have. So I don't know exactly how that's going to work out, whether or not it's going to affect my enjoyment of what I'm doing, but I'm kind of, I've got half an eye on that. In much the same way, I'm also not completely sure how to make this very interesting for you guys. I'm going to be obviously, when I start to speak, you're going to be getting a lot of those videos. In the first month when I'm not speaking, you're going to be getting more coverage of what I'm doing and ideas that are coming up. So if you do have any ideas about how I can make this more interesting for you or more helpful, then please leave a comment below and I'll make sure to take all that under consideration. Lastly, I'm not exactly starting Italian from scratch in the strictest sense. I already know Spanish, Portuguese, and French, so I have a pretty good foundation in Romance languages. So I think, ironically, one of the biggest challenges of this project is not going to be so much learning Italian, but it's going to be keeping it separate from all the other languages that I know. And I've already seen in my first day learning, there's a lot of scope for interference, because sometimes Italian sounds a bit like Spanish, other times it sounds a bit like French, other times it's just its own thing with prepositions and pronouns all in the wrong place. So we're going to see how that works out. But for a more in-depth discussion on all of this stuff, I've recorded a video with Steve Kaufman, which I will link to right now. Hopefully that's in the right place. If that doesn't pop up, it'll be in the description below. Me and Steve talk a lot more about these kind of what an input-based method means, along with some of his recommendations for approaching this project. So there we go. I'm excited. I really hope this whole thing is useful for you. Please subscribe to this channel and click the notifications button as well if you want to get notified about these videos. Be sure to sign up to the Italian newsletter if you want more stuff like this. And I'll see you at the end of the week for my week 1 recap video. Ciao.
Okay, so in that video, obviously I mentioned a ton of stuff, links and places where I'm going to be hosting all of my blog posts, my videos, listing all the resources I'm using to learn Italian. So if you'd like to go and check that out, maybe bookmark that page so you can come back to it and find it when you want to. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to the podcast, iwillteachyoualanguage.com/episode 267. So go ahead and check that out, bookmark it on your phone so you can find it again when you need to. And I'll see you back in the next episode of the podcast.
Thanks for listening to today's episode, and in case you didn't already know, I teach languages in a rather unusual way through stories. Now, stories are a great way to learn a new language because when you're engrossed in a story, you remember things more easily, and the mechanics of the language just start clicking inside your brain. It's quite something, and if you'd like to find out how you can learn a new language or improve your skills in a language that you already know and do it with the power of stories, then you should check out my free Story Learning Kit, which will teach you exactly how this method works and how you can use it yourself to learn a new language. Visit storylearning.com/podkit, that's PODKIT, to get free access. Inside, you'll find explanatory videos, masterclasses, worksheets, short stories to practice with, and much, much more. Once again, that is storylearning.com/podkit, PODKIT. And if you're lucky, you might also find a link in the podcast description or show notes of this episode.